Before we start the video, please don't be a Baka and subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. I will assure you your little effort will help me a lot. Now back to the video. Sitting at a table, B-String tells him that the universe does not have a single dimension, and Jae-hwan agrees, telling him that things like parallel universes and the multiverse exist on Earth. In response, B-String starts to explain to him in detail, revealing that there is one main dimensional level called the Almighty Land, under which there are countless alterations. The devil reveals that Earth is just a small planet in a dimensional system scattered among the countless alterations referred to by them as the 294th world. He explains that in the tower, the walkers earn skills and items and adapt to the system of the Almighty Land while working on their status. They get a chance to travel to another world. He reveals that in all that process, devils like him have the role of supporting such games. In response, Jae-hwan asks why he is doing something like that. Hearing that, B-String remarks that he is actually curious about why the Earth was chosen among the alterations for the tower impact and why he was forced to face such a fate. He explains that it only happened by chance that their planet was chosen. But Jae-hwan stops him, stating that what he wants to know is why a devil is operating the tower. Surprised, B-String stares at him while Jae-hwan goes on to ask what he gains from doing this kind of work. Feeling a little nervous, B-String states that he can call it the volunteer work that creatures like him do. Looking at Jae-hwan's expressions, he adds that Jae-hwan does not seem to believe whatever he is saying, but it is the truth that devils enjoy volunteering a lot. He explains that it happens on many different planets where the devils watch over the walkers and live in paradise alongside them. After giving a long explanation and justification, B-String remarks that Jae-hwan must have believed him till now. In response, Jae-hwan smiles, calling it all pointless talk. After some time, Jae-hwan sits in the snowfield, looking at his status window and finds all these skills to have reached their maximum level. Drinking a potion to heal his injuries, he realizes that he does not have any more skills to level up, yet he is still unable to defeat B-String. Lying on the snow, he wonders if humans can really be reduced to nothing and thinks that it might be possible in the system of this strange world. Suddenly, he experiences a strange feeling and becomes surprised, wondering what it was. Just then, he begins to see fine particles floating in the air that slowly start to grow bigger, and he considers it to be a hallucination. As he holds one of them in his hand, it quickly dissipates into the air, forming different shapes. Observing them, Jae-hwan comes to the conclusion that these particles are the essence of this world, regardless of their form. Suddenly, he gets the message that the monarch will cultivate and accept supplies for him soon, which piques his curiosity. Going back to B-String, he asks if the monarch is a king, causing him to remark that Jae-hwan has finally gained interest in that. B-String explains that the monarchs of the beholders of the Great Land and the people who clear the game proceed to the Great Land and receive power and support from the monarchs. While Jae-hwan expresses his confusion about getting power and support, B-String continues to explain that depending on what monarch he chooses, his future will change as well. He says that if Jae-hwan follows what he is saying, he will use all of his power to help him go under a great monarch. However, it only applies if he is willing to participate in the main game until the end. After hearing all that, Jae-hwan remarks that he sounds like an insurance salesperson who persuades people, making him feel a little embarrassed. After that, Jae-hwan agrees to follow what he is saying but states that he will leave the place after 10 days. 9 days later, while Jae-hwan is busy with swordsmanship training, B-String watches him on the screen, remarking that he does this useless thing all day long. Although he feels frustrated, he thinks that he needs to be a little more patient since the time is almost over. Recalling that he had to buy the tower because he was deceived by these people, he feels enraged at them. He remembers that the tower was said to have been personally built by a master and was an antique first-generation tower where its age could not be guessed. He thinks that if it were a third-generation tower, there would have been a function to forcibly end the tutorial without damaging the prizes. However, since it is a first-generation tower, he cannot end the game without agreement on the prizes, which intensifies his frustration. Considering that he bought a first-generation tower because it was a little cheaper than others, he thinks that all he can do is be patient and wait until the next day. Finally, the last day comes, and B-String happily gives all the information about the main game to Jae-hwan, who thanks him in return. Displaying the invitation to the main game on the window again, B-String tells him to choose the accept button this time. Feeling overjoyed that this day has finally come, however, to his surprise, instead of accepting the invitation, Jae-won gives him a sudden blow, causing him to get confused. As he stands with Jae-won's sword pierced into his body, he asks what Jae-won is doing. In response, Jae-won states that he should know by looking, reveals that his true intention is to hunt him, and launches another attack. Jae-won remembers that after seeing those shiny particles, the stabbing motion of this sword has become unstable, leading him to experience a feeling of discomfort whenever he tries to stab. While he is thinking that, B-String raises his hand in the air to hit him. However, using a swift motion of his sword, he severs B-String's arm and thinks that this feeling of discomfort is actually a sense of being alive. However, just then, huge and strong vines made of steel emerge from the floor and trap Jae-won inside while healing his severed arm. B-String states that he has never seen a human like Jae-won before, remarking that it would have been easier for the both of them if it was like that sooner. In response, Jae-won, who is completely trapped inside the steel vines, asks what B-String is going to do, stating that he will not be able to finish the game without his consent. Agreeing to it, B-String states that he gave up on getting his consent a long time ago. Turning to Jae-won, B-String asks why he expects the game to continue indefinitely. He reveals that this tower is programmed to end automatically 100 days after the tutorial is cleared, which leaves Jae-won shocked. Saying that, he turns around, stating that he just needs to hold on to Jae-won and get him to participate quietly in the main game after 100 days. Holding his sword tightly, Jae-won calls out to B-String, stating that in the Great Land, he is called the Shrine of Teasing. Jae-won goes on to reveal that B-String has lived 784 years, has gone around a total of 128 worlds, and has continued his cultivation among the targeting tribes, which leaves him shocked. Jae-won states that B-String was actually planning on handing him over to the jet black monarch called the Mathematician. Shocked at the fact that he knows everything, B-String asks who he actually is. In response, Jae-won smiles and reveals that he is the prize that B-String has been nurturing in the tower for many years. After that, he breaks the vines into pieces, stating that it will not continue anymore. After breaking the vines into pieces, Jae-won emerges from within and charges forward at great speed, making B-String bewildered. Reaching near him, Jae-won strikes his formidable sword into the devil's shoulder, causing him to experience extreme pain for the first time. After running behind Jae-won for some time, B-String finally comes face to face with him. Holding his injured shoulder, he feels shocked at the wound getting worse instead of healing itself and remarks that it is something impossible. Looking at the formidable sword in Jae-won's hand, B-String becomes increasingly shocked, recognizing it to be the overload adapter. Jae-won reveals that the day after he reached the 100th floor of the tower, he had doubts regarding the place, the devil's power, and his own strength as a human being. Soon after, the essence of the world was torn apart, and his doubts started to decrease. Finally, he reached a stage where he had no more doubts. Saying that, he launches another deadly attack, causing the devil to drift backward. Realizing that he has no other choice, B-String lifts the temporal restrictions and shows his true devil-like appearance. After that, he charges at Jae-won, stating that he will not be going easy on him anymore and telling Jae-won to surrender. Reaching Jae-won, B-String uses his sharp nails to hurt his face and starts to tear his body apart, causing blood to spurt out. Doing that, he states that although Jae-won is quite amazing, even he has his limits and cannot fight against a devil like him. With that, countless thorns emerge from the ground, piercing through Jae-won's body and making him wonder if this is how it is going to end, with blood dripping down his hands. He holds the Ice Dragon's sword tightly while the time of the tutorial reaches its final countdown. Meanwhile, B-String walks towards him, stating that he will need to participate in the main game no matter what. However, as soon as he reaches near Jae-won, the countdown finishes, and a bright light emerges from the sword that knocks B-String off his feet. Getting on his feet, Jae-won recalls killing the formidable monsters on the lower floors and charges at B-String, resolute on hunting him as well. Looking at the sword's power, B-String feels shocked, realizing that it is not merely an adaptation. While the sword starts to emit lightning strikes that tear his body into pieces, this leads to experiencing immense agony, and he crashes to the ground. While Jae-won reaches out to him, stating that humans aren't things that they can just trade around, Jae-won states that they are not insignificant baselines that they can just use as they please and digitize, and they are not the products that are sold for money. Bringing his sword near B-String's eye, Jae-hwan states that he will no longer follow the scenario planned by them. Instead, he states his intention to destroy the place, climb up to the next floor, keep going up further, and destroy this entire world made by devils like them. Hearing that, B-String starts to implore him to stop, saying that there is no such thing as the next level. However, Jae-hwan insists that the next level exists and reveals that he was not simply called there. He remembers finding the scribblings on stones and walls while climbing up the floors and calls them the scribblings of a certain artist's anguish. He remembers reading a scribble on the 47th floor when he wondered if the entire tower was just an imitation of the first demon, the top of the illusion tree. He remembers finding a signal like that on many of the floors and coming to the conclusion that these scribblings were done by the creator of the tower. Remembering those signals to the illusion tree, Jae-hwan turns to B-String and asks if this place is the root of the illusion tree, remarking that if this is the root, there must be a trunk as well. Looking at the ceiling, Jae-hwan states that he might find a way by breaking it and uses his sword to completely destroy the roof, causing B-String to feel shocked at the destruction of his tower. As the ceiling starts to break, the system quickly senses the error, checks for other walkers in the tower, and after finding no one, it ends the tutorial session. After some time, Jae-hwan is transported to an island-like place where he remarks that he has finally found the next floor. While he is looking around the island, numerous gigantic beasts suddenly appear from within the trees and surround him while he stands still holding his sword. Suddenly, one of the beasts leaps up to attack him, but he uses a slight thrust of his sword without even moving from his place to cut the beast's body into two pieces. After killing the beast, he turns around and finds another one behind him, which is way bigger than the previous one. Considering that a slight thrust will not be enough for such a big monster, Jae-hwan holds his sword tightly and launches a normal thrust that tears the beast apart into pieces. After killing all of them, Jae-hwan cuts their horns and gathers them, thinking that the monsters on this floor are much weaker compared to the previous ones. While he is doing that, he suddenly hears a voice and turns around to find creatures similar to aliens expressing their anger at his act of killing the beasts. Turning to his fellows, the creature leading the group commands them in a code language that Jae-hwan is unable to understand. Understanding the word horn in his command, Jae-hwan asks if they want the horns and offers to make a deal where he will give them the horns in exchange for information about the place. However, without listening to him, the creatures rush forward at great speed and try to launch an attack. Jae-hwan manages to dodge and warns them that if they try to attack him again, he will kill them all. However, after some time, he realizes that they are not going to stop, so he takes a sigh and kills them all. After dealing with them, he approaches the head of the group lying on the ground on the brink of death and asks about the place they are in. In response, the creature starts to express his surprise at Jae-hwan's power in the same code language. Getting frustrated, Jae-hwan grabs him by the antennas emerging from his head, causing him to scream and demands that he speak in a language he can understand. In response, the creature bites his own tongue and dies, leaving Jae-hwan to realize that they have strong willpower even greater than his expectations. Looking at the broken antennas in his hand, he makes a pile of sand and places them inside. After that, he starts searching for any valuable items that can provide him with the information he seeks. While searching, he finds a small pouch that turns out to be a small dimensional backpack capable of storing a large number of items in a limited space. Considering it to be similar to an inventory, Jae-hwan remarks that it is a good item as he has been unable to use the interface system since he got out of the tower. Putting the horns inside the pouch, he thinks that he expected to use the interface system of other dimensional worlds like the Almighty Land, which turned out to be nothing more than a lie. He also finds several multicolored stones of different shapes in their possession, which turn out to be spirit stones that can possibly increase a certain amount of spirit energy. Collecting the stones from all of the creatures, Jae-hwan looks at them, remarking that all the creatures had one of these stones. Considering them to be valuable, he puts them in the backpack as well. Turning to the dead bodies of the beasts, Jae-hwan thinks that he has so many things to store and wonders if he should simply throw the beasts away. After some time, he proceeds forward and starts to collect all the items he can find on the island, including different weapons, fruits, and other edible items. While looking around the island, Jae-hwan comes across a map and opens it up, realizing that it is the map to the illusion tree, which is referred to as chaos. Looking at the map, He thinks that this is a place that was not available in the information that the devil gave him. Meanwhile, in another part of the island, the same gigantic beasts are in the middle of a battle against a group of humans led by a woman with a cruel smile on her face. She throws her dagger in the direction of the beast, which accidentally strikes a member of her group. Apologizing for that, she states that she is going to hunt separately from them and walks away. While the injured person feels enraged at her clumsy moves, after a while, they hear her voice again and turn around, feeling shocked. In front of them comes a gigantic Bjorn beast, following the woman, making them realize that she has disturbed such a formidable creature and is bringing danger to them. While they are contemplating how to deal with it, Jaehwan watches them, remarking that the woman looks the strongest among them and wondering if they are on bad terms with each other. He thinks that they are going to die if it continues like that and wonders how they manage to clear the Tower of Nightmares with their skill level. Just then, the person who got injured by the woman's dagger unleashes his skill, the Breath of the Fire King, and directs it towards the beast. The woman also intervenes again, stating that she will also help, but instead of launching an attack on the beast, she hits the same person again, causing his attack to get disoriented. Laughing at her mistake, she apologizes once again, while the person expresses his anger at her clumsy moves, calling her rude for not acknowledging his help. Meanwhile, the beast reaches near him and opens its mouth to attack the person without him noticing. However, before the beast can attack, Jaehwan jumps down from the place he was standing and uses a slight thrust to pierce his sword through the beast's head. This causes blood to spurt out of the beast's head and stain the person's face as they try to look between the clouds of dust forming due to the beast's fall. They find a formidable sword pierced through the beast's head finally, and as the dust begins to settle, Jaehwan appears from within, holding the sword, making them confused about his identity. Considering that the Bjorn is dead, they start discussing among themselves if it would be okay for them to take the corpse of the beast. Hearing their discussion, Jaehwan asks if this monster is something important. In response, one of them reveals that it is so strong that it takes more than 10 people to defeat it, which makes him realize that the more horns a monster has, the stronger it is. Just then, the woman who has been observing Jaehwan for some time walks up to him and asks who he is, remarking that there is no adapter in the region of chaos who can kill a Bjorn with a simple thrust. She asks where he has come from. Hearing that, Jaehwan turns to her and asks what chaos is, leaving her surprised at his lack of knowledge about it. Not knowing about that, Jaehwan starts to walk away with the group, telling them that he does not belong to this place but was just passing by, and he does not know any of the languages spoken in this region. Hearing that, the leader of the group feels surprised, remarking that it is very strange for a language barrier to exist in such a region. After a while, they ask him again if he is okay with them taking the Bjorn corpse, and he agrees. While they are talking, the woman stays quiet, thinking that even though the person claims to be a passerby, the way he killed a Bjorn with a single strike without using any skill seems strange. She finds it very difficult to use her powers to figure out his identity and comes to the conclusion that his spirit power is similar to that of a non-adapter. Wondering who he exactly is, she calls out to him, saying that she has a question for him. She states that there are less than a handful of adapters throughout chaos who can kill a Bjorn with a single thrust, and she demands to know who he is and where he has come from. In response, he repeats his counter-question, asking what chaos exactly is. Hearing that, she expresses frustration and asks if he does not understand what she is saying and sarcastically asks if asking for an introduction is a hard thing to understand. In response, Jaehwan states that he does understand her query. However, the question of who he is brings back memories of his childhood, his school days, and his life spent on Earth. He thinks that all of those memories became meaningless after he entered the tower and gained new comrades and memories in return. However, as that tutorial came to an end, all of those disappeared as if they were a mirage. Jaehwan believes that although all these comrades may be somewhere on Earth, they will be strangers to him because the memories he received as a reward are something they lack. After contemplating everything, Jaehwan turns to the woman and claims that he does not remember anything. In response, the woman starts shouting at him, stating that she doesn't believe his claim of having amnesia. However, Jaehwan clarifies that he never claimed to have amnesia, but the woman insists it doesn't matter and asks if he is the mighty of the abyss, leaving him confused about what that is. Feeling annoyed by her countless questions, he tells her to stop, stating that he has what he wants to know and puts his hand in the backpack. After a while, he pulls out the ice dragon sword and shows it to her, shocking her as she realizes he possesses a spirit weapon. This leads her to understand that he didn't defeat the beast just because of his strength, but because he had a potent weapon. Just then, the other members of the group also turn to him, surprised by the fact that he possesses a spirit weapon. While he puts it back inside the backpack, meanwhile, feeling angry at her group for jeopardizing her mission, the woman thinks she could have completed it without them. Suddenly, an idea strikes her, and she turns to Jae-won, offering him a proposition and asking if he wants to hear it. Subsequently, she gives him a detailed explanation of what chaos is, and they proceed to discuss the party. She reveals that the people accompanying her are a heinous group aligned to a clan named Red Fox, and she wants Jae-won to kill them. She states that they are dangerous people who might also attempt to kill him, making him feel surprised. After some time, the sky becomes dark, and one of the members of the group suggests that they stay there for the night since walking in the dark might make them vulnerable to the beasts. After deciding to stay at that location, they light a fire and sit around it to rest. Jae-won, who lies under a tree, looks at the shining particles in the air above him and thinks that the village is close to their current location according to the map. As he holds one of the particles in his hand, he receives a notification that he has achieved the second stage of awakening and can now comprehend what people are talking or thinking about. Using this new skill, he learns about the discussion of the group about him and finds out that they consider him to be a mediocre person who can only kill big monsters due to his weapon. Hearing their conversation, Jae-won realizes that their intentions are not good and thinks that they would be scared if they knew that he got this weapon from the root of the illusion tree. He also feels surprised that people are aiming for the equipment in the tower, which doesn't seem very valuable to him. Looking at the starry sky, he thinks that this place doesn't seem to be the almighty land. Just then, the group of people sitting around the fire gets up and starts running towards him. While he keeps lying down calmly, observing his calm demeanor, the woman asks why he is lying like that, pointing out that people are coming towards him. Pulling him up, she suggests that he use the sword that devours things to get rid of the enemies, but he states that he doesn't have it because he lent it to someone who wanted to inspect it. Just then, the group reaches him and surrounds him, while their leader states that he will make good use of that sword. In response, the woman states that they cannot harm him until she is with him. The members of the opposite group remark that they have been called to kill just 2 people and express their desire to get rid of them and return soon. In response, the woman questions if they truly want to see bloodshed and prepares herself for the fight, finally revealing her true powers. Just as the members of the group charge at them, the woman rushes forward, hitting them all with incredible speed and knocking them to the ground. She then throws a dagger at one of them, which pierces into his forehead, leading to his death, stating that she is very angry at the moment. She throws countless daggers in the direction of the other group members, stating that from then on, all of them are going to suffer a terrible fate. Realizing that her intention was to kill them from the beginning, the leader of the group states that they should have understood it when she lured the monsters to them. Feeling enraged, he asks who it was that made the request to the Shadow Warriors. In response, she states that it doesn't matter because they have killed so many innocent people, which has made them a target for many people, and she throws daggers in their direction. The head of the opposite group laughs in response, stating that there is no way the Shadow Warriors would move for such pathetic people, and he breaks all of her daggers into pieces. Holding Jae-won's formidable sword, the person states that she must have received a private request which will lead her to be killed by them. As she looks at the sword, she remarks that he wants to face her with a spirit weapon, while he laughs, stating that he has taken all precautions. Just then, more people start to appear around him, and she realizes that all of them are skilled adapters and number at least 40. This makes her surprised, while the leader states that he had to take at least this much precaution for fighting against a Shadow Warrior and a person who killed the Bjorn in a single strike. He goes on to say that if he knew he would get the spirit weapons so easily, he would not have called his master to join the fight. Just then, a gigantic hybrid human creature appears behind them, which the woman recognizes to be the Black Fox. She asks if he has such free time to take part in small fights. In response, the Black Fox tells her to consider it an honor to meet him, calling her the Witch of Massacre. He states that over half of the Red Fox clan has gathered to hunt her down, while his clan members charge at her, remarking that it is really an honor for her. The woman states that since he has so much free time, he should wait and see. However, she secretly thinks that she is not certain about beating him in a one-on-one battle since he is a third-stage adapter. Turning to Jae-won, she apologizes and states that she will not be able to protect him. She throws a nightmare stone in his direction, telling him to take it and run. Holding it in his hand, Jae-won asks what it is, and the woman replies that it is a return stone using which he can escape to the nearest castle. She explains that it's the only one she has and tells him to use it, leaving him confused. He realizes that it is not a stone that can transport someone to the past but a stone that can save someone in the present, and he closes his hand tightly around it, remembering Youngwon's tragic end. Jae-won thinks that if instead of that fake stone, he had given this stone to Yoonwon, he would have been saved. Turning to the woman, he asks if she would choose to return to the past if she had the chance. Hearing the question, the woman states that this is not the time to ask such things and firmly replies that she would definitely not go back to the past. She believes she has tried her best in life, and if she is going to die, it will be on that day, and she will accept it without seeking to change the past. In response, Jae-won places his hand on her shoulder, reassuring her that she is not going to die that day. He then takes out his suppressing dragon sword, surprising her, and quickly leaps up to launch an attack while she keeps standing there. Using his sword, he strikes down all the enemies that come his way and keeps moving forward. Observing this, the Black Fox activates his skill, the Flame King's 14 formation, charging the weapons of all his clan members with his power. However, Jae-won counters with his skill, the Lost Enchantment, effortlessly killing the entire group within moments without them realizing what has happened. Finally reaching the Black Fox, Jae-won pierces the sword into the creature's claw, causing immense agony. This leaves the leader of the group in utter shock. After killing the Black Fox, Jae-won steps towards him and brings his hand forward. As Jae-won retrieves his spirit sword from the person, the remaining members of the group start to run away to save their lives. Meanwhile, Jae-won tightly grasps the sword and uses the light stab to raise a tornado-like storm that tears the bodies of the fleeing people into pieces. Witnessing this overwhelming power, the woman feels shocked. She recalls that when Jae-won allowed the group to take the Byorn corpse, she considered him a fool who made himself vulnerable to them and had no sense of danger. Contrary to her expectations, Jae-won turns out to be a very strong person in reality. While thinking about this, she calls out to him and asks what his real identity is. In response, Jae-won smiles and asks if she has already forgotten, stating that she knows his identity. Observing her expressions, he jokingly asks if she is also suffering from memory loss like him, which annoys her. Afterwards, she requests that he give her back the return stone she had given him earlier, but he informs her that he has lost it. Frustrated, she questions how he could lose such a valuable item, but he simply starts to walk away. After a while, he sits near the fire, finding the surroundings somewhat peaceful. Meanwhile, the woman continues searching for her return stone in the vicinity and in his backpack but is unable to find it, which intensifies her frustration. Jae-won turns to her and states that she already knows his identity, leaving her confused about what he is talking about. He clarifies that his identity is that he is a human, causing her to remark if he is messing with her as she sits down by the fire. Jae-won asks if she is a human, and she agrees, stating that he is almost a human. Hearing that, Jae-won clenches his fist, calling it great, while she stares at him in confusion, wondering what is on his mind. Sitting quietly beside him, she contemplates whether being a human is enough to succeed. Walking away, the woman asks if Jae-won really does not have any memories of being in the Almighty Land when he was coming to Chaos, and he agrees. Hearing that, the woman states that she is very envious of him because he lost all his memories. Feeling confused, Jae-won inquires what is so good about losing memories. In response, she states that most people in Chaos would be envious of him because it is obvious why most people come to Chaos. Hearing that, Jae-won turns to her and asks how she ended up there. In response, she stops walking and turns to him, stating that if he comes to know what he is asking, he will regret it a lot. After a long walk, they finally reach a place called Gorgon Fortress, and the woman remarks that it is a village. While walking towards the fortress, he comes across a place that resembles the summoning ground on the first floor of the tower and wonders what it is. Just then, a faint light begins to emerge from the area, leading to the appearance of countless people imploring to be saved. Jae-hwan realizes that this place is actually the summoning ground for the dead, while the woman remarks that he must have found the answer to how she ended up in chaos. She advises him not to ask this question to anyone in this place and welcomes him to the world of the dead. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Thanks for watching, the Baka Senpai.